of attribution right now, so I don't want to go there. But again, Jen, this is of a piece of the same kind of playbook we've seen from Russia in the past.
And what could be the point of a cyber attack like we saw last night?
Again, you're asking me to speak for the actors responsible for this, but one could imagine, right, that an attack like that is meant to disrupt capability, to try to dissuade action, to try to change the behaviors or the leadership decisions inside Ukraine. I mean, any number of reasons, not to mention just to intimidate. Now, as I understand it, most of these websites are coming back online now. But I mean, I think there's probably multiple purposes that were, sought by the actors in this case.
And these operatives that you mentioned that are inside Ukraine, are they in the Donbass region, or have they moved out into other areas?
I'm not going to get into very specific information about our knowledge of what these operatives are capable of doing and where and when. I think we've really spoken to it at about the farthest level we can right now.
And John, just on vaccine mandates, what impact does the Supreme Court decision, the Osha decision, have on the U.S. military and its mandate?
As we understand it, it does not affect the federal contractors and the executive order by the president with respect to defense contractors specifically.
And National Guard, any?
Well, it is not. Yeah, it has nothing to do with the National Guard. It has to do with civilian employers with an employee level, I think, of over 100. That has nothing to do with the National Guard. And the Secretary, again, remains convinced that the vaccines work. The mandate remains in place for the total force. And again, we continue to encourage those who haven't been vaccinated and don't have an exemption to get vaccinated and do the right thing.
And what about civilians working for the Pentagon or DOD? Are they under a mandate right now, or does the OSHA? But OSHA doesn't apply to them.
There's still, I mean, there's the workforce mandate for our civilians is still in place. Yeah. Mike, did you have a question, Janie?
Thank you, John. I think you are aware of that North Korea fired another missile yesterday, and North Korea continues to fire missiles. Are we just watching and condemning on this, and does the United States have any contemplating any actions? What we are doing now?
You're right. There was another launch yesterday, which we have assessed to be of a ballistic nature. We're continuing to consult with our allies and partners and with the international community about best steps forward. And as I think we've made clear, we're willing to sit down and talk about these issues with North Korea, and there's been no sign of any interest in doing it in Pyongyang's part. Here at the Department of Defense, to your question of what are you doing, we're continuing to work very closely with our ROK allies to make sure the alliance remains capable and strong and vibrant. And we were just there, as you know, not long ago. So our focus here is making sure that we can meet our treaty commitments to the people of Korea and on the Korean Peninsula and in the region writ large. And we're going to continue to do that.
Yes, another question. A State Department spokesperson Price said at the briefing this week, quote, "There are many tools in the U.S. arsenal, and we'll use them when necessary." That means, do you think any military options are possible in response to North Korea?
Well, the spokesman's right. I mean, there are lots of levers of power that the United States government and our allies and partners have at our disposal. Obviously, President Biden has been very clear, diplomacy leads. And that would be no different here when we're talking about North Korea and the Korean Peninsula. It will be largely unsatisfactory to you, but I'm going to go back to what I just said before, which is from a Department of Defense perspective, our priority is on, we already have security commitments on the peninsula. And so our job here at DOD is to make sure that we are able to meet those commitments to the best of our ability. And that's why we've been to Korea twice now. That's why we continue to discuss and maintain a close relationship with our South Korean counterparts. And we're going to continue to make sure that the alliance is ready, as we say, ready to fight tonight. Okay?
Just a quick follow-up. Was it a hypersonic missile test?
We're still conducting an intel assessment of it, Jen. We're not at the point where we're willing and able to go beyond classifying as a ballistic missile launch. Barb?
Regarding Ukraine and Russia, you've used the word operatives several times. For the public, can you help them understand people understand what you mean when you say operatives? Who are they? Who are they working for?
Well, I mean,
if your intelligence is of such high fidelity, who are these people?
I'm not going to go into more detail than what we've been able to go to specifically today. That said, Barb, and again, we've seen this playbook before. When we talk about Russian operatives, it's it could represent a blend of individuals inside the Russian government, whether it's from their intelligence communities, their security services, or even their military. They often hybridize their personnel to such a degree that the lines are not necessarily really clear who they specifically report to in the conduct of some of these more covert and clandestine operations.
And do you think, I just have a couple of follow-ups, do you think that, again, because you're saying your intelligence is that good, would any of this be...
Can I just stop you there? What I said was... what I said was that we are able to share with you this finding and this belief. I would hope you would take away from the fact that there is enough supporting evidence underneath that we would not be willing and able to talk to publicly. That's what I meant. I don't think I said it's so good. I just want to make sure I make that clear.
So my question is, I think you said high fidelity. So what would you assess? Would any of this be happening without Vladimir Putin being directly knowledgeable about it?
Again, I want to be careful not to speak for another sovereign government. That said, again, if past is prologue, it is difficult to see that these kinds of activities would be done without the knowledge, if not the imprimatur, of the very senior levels of the Russian government.
And a very quick follow-up on the FAA, NORAD, and airspace. So we have another statement from NORAD today saying that they did not warn of a missile threat to Canada or the United States.
I believe that's a statement I gave.
It is. I'm so sorry. You said it, apparently. So you're clearly saying the FAA made a mistake. There's just no question that that's what you're saying. My question is this. We've now seen two cases in recent years, FAA and the incident in Hawaii. In both cases, the Defense Department says other people made mistakes. But nonetheless, these are issues, that two cases where Americans were seriously impacted and there were real questions in people's minds about whether there was a threat to the United States. Is there something that the Defense Department needs to do to make sure this doesn't happen a third time?
Well, number one, I'm not blaming another agency or casting aspersions upon another agency or the decision-making process that they executed. To your larger point, I would tell you that we are a learning organization, and we are always trying to improve our processes and the manner in which information is processed and shared, not just within the Department of Defense, but outside the department. We're always looking at ways to try to improve that. Yeah.
John, back to Ukraine. Given the operatives in Ukraine, given the attacks on the websites, Is there still room for diplomacy to work?
In short, we believe there is. And it's certainly the department's hope that diplomacy can prevail. But the administration is not willing to give up on the effort to solve this diplomatically. Yeah, Mike?
Can you confirm if Russia is using any of their Wagner Group mercenaries in this, or is it all going to be government?
I cannot. But your question gets to Barbara's question that they can hybridize their agencies and their personnel in very unique ways. Yeah.
Yeah, so,
I got to get to the phones here pretty quick.
yeah, I waited
Go
so
ahead.
you can
No,
go.
no, it's all right. Go
Okay,
ahead.
thank
I
you.
called on you.
Yeah,
I
thank you.
It's actually more a reminder to me to get to the phones than it is to you.
You can go to the phone and come
No,
back.
no.
Thank you. So based again to revisit the Ukraine. Thanks for sharing this information. But based on this information that you just mentioned, are you able to assess whether such a potential attack or invasion by Russia, based on this pretext attack that might be coming, is something imminent? Can you put a certain time frame on it? And what is the administration doing to try to dissuade Russia from carrying on this campaign?
Well, look, we just spent 2 days, in Europe as an administration, and I won't speak for the State Department, but trying to do exactly that, Fadi, which is to find ways to de-escalate the tensions and to prevent an incursion diplomatically. So we're still very much into Jim's question. We still very much believe that there's time and space for diplomacy. We do not believe that Mr. Putin has made a final decision yet. So as long as that's the case, yes, we still believe there's time and space for diplomacy, and we obviously want that to prevail. But if it doesn't, we're also, as an administration, ready to continue to look at options on the back end of that. And as for timing, I wouldn't begin to speculate right now. Again, we still think there's, back to my time and space argument, that there's time and space for diplomacy. So I wouldn't begin to hypothesize or speculate about if there's an incursion, when that could happen. That we are seeing these indications of pretextual moves by Russia certainly gives us deep concern, and I think that's one of the reasons why we're willing to talk about it now. Yeah, Jared from Al Monitor.
Hi, Mr. Kirby. I'm just wondering if the department can confirm. We've seen reports, particularly in Iranian media, that Iran has launched, the IRGC has launched a solid-state fuel rocket into space carrying a satellite. Just wondering if you can confirm.
I'm afraid I can't, Jared. I haven't seen those reports. We will take that question for you, and if we can provide any context on it, we will, but I've not seen those reports. Okay, Tony Capaccio.
Hi, Jen. A couple questions. Can you review the bidding on the U.S. training forces in the Ukraine? I think there's a National Guard unit, the Task Force Gator, and Special Ops forces. Roughly how many are there, and the types of training they provide? Also, if the Russians decide to move, will those troops be pulled out of the Ukraine, or does the U.S. have a deconfliction line with Russia, like we've had in Syria, to give the locations of our troops so they would not be attacked?
Tony, there's less than 200 Florida National Guard there on a rotating advise and assist mission. This is something that we've been doing now for several years, and they remain in Ukraine and at their task. I talked about this a little bit yesterday. I got a similar question, or maybe it was your question, about what would we do with them if there's an incursion. Again, we don't want to see an incursion. We still think there's time and space for that not to happen. We don't believe that President Putin has made a decision. So I'm not going to speculate about what we would or wouldn't do if there's an incursion. But what I would tell you very clearly is that force protection remains paramount in our minds, and certainly in the Secretary's mind, and we will make all the appropriate and proper decisions to make sure that our people are safe in any event. Sylvie.
You had a deconfliction line in Syria with Russia.
Do you have a deconfliction line?
Do I have it? Do we? Well, we.
Have
Syria.
Similar to Syria.
a hotline.
Yeah, no. I mean, there's no deconfliction line in Ukraine
Well,
with Russia, but I think I get the gist of the question. We have many lines of communication with Russia, including direct communication with Russian military leaders. The secretary just spoke to Minister Shoigu a few days ago. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Milley, has spoken on numerous occasions with his counterpart. And we have direct lines of communication with them, so I don't think we need a hotline necessarily with respect to Ukraine. Again, I understand the gist of the question. It's about what would you do with the trainers on the ground. We will do the most appropriate thing to do to make sure that we're always keeping their safety and security foremost in our minds. But again, nobody wants to see another incursion. And we want to make sure that that doesn't occur. So we want to give time and space for our diplomats to see if there's a way for this to resolve itself without outright conflict. But we will do what we need to do. We will make the right decisions we need to make sure that our people are safe and secure. Sylvie.
To Ukraine in case of invasion, but would it be possible to provide them some weapons that were supposed to go to the Afghan military and are now available?
Sylvie, we are, as I said, we're going to continue to provide security assistance to help Ukraine defend itself, and we're looking at a broad range of options for what that kind of material could be. I don't have any decisions to speak to today, so I don't want to get ahead of that. But we're gonna continue to look for options to help them defend themselves.
You announce it when you do it?
That's I can't promise that there'll be an announcement every time something goes. That's not the way we've done it in the past. So I wouldn't look for that to happen in the future. What I can tell you is, and I said this before, that even as we completed the last tranche, that we were going to continue to provide security assistance material to the Ukrainians, and we will do that. Last question, I think, today, unless there's more in the room, we'll go to a show from Nippon TV.
Thank you, John. It's about the spread of the Omicron variant at the overseas bases. Infections at the U.S. military bases in Japan and maybe also South Korea have been spreading since the end of the last year. And although the U.S. military in Japan has strengthened its protocol, some point out that the measures to prevent the infection were insufficient, or it was a little bit too late to strengthen the protocols. So what lessons has DoD learned from this case, and how will DoD improve communications between Japan and the U.S. regarding border infection control?
We did make more stringent our own protocols in Japan. We obviously take very seriously not only our commitment to our own people and their health and readiness, but to the Japanese people, certainly in surrounding communities to our bases in Japan. So we take that very, very seriously. We are in constant communication with Japanese government officials and certainly in the Ministry of Defense. And we're going to keep watching Omicron, just like we're doing it here and elsewhere around the world, to see if we need to change our posture. Just recently here in the Pentagon, we increased our health protection conditions from Bravo Plus to Charlie, which obviously has resulted in a lot of very visible changes. And we're going to continue to do that in Japan as well. And if there are changes that need to be made, if the spread of the virus gets more severe, then we will absolutely do that, and we will do it in full transparency with our Japanese allies. Yes, ma'am.
Thanks.
I just wanted to follow up for the second part of my question earlier. Just if Russia does follow through with the pretext for this invasion, how will the U.S. prove it? How is the Pentagon prepared to respond? And does the Pentagon have a warning to Russia?
I think we've been very clear through the multiple conversations that we've had with Russia, particularly President Biden himself, that there will be severe consequences if there's another incursion. So I think we and many others in the international community, to include the NATO alliance, has been very clear about what the consequences and repercussions will be. I won't speak to announcements that haven't come yet, or how we might communicate what we're seeing on the ground, except to say that we do have evidence and indications that they are trying to set this pretext for another incursion, and we believe it was important to make note of that. That we are aware, that we do see what they're doing, and that there are echoes of what they did in 2014. And whether or not that actually ends up happening or not, and what we speak to at the time, I think I'll leave to a future setting.
Can I have a quick follow-up on that?
Yeah.
Nonetheless, pretty extraordinary for any administration to speak about this kind of information. So you could have chosen just to communicate it privately to Moscow. Can you tell us why the administration decided to go public? Your question presupposes that we didn't, indicate to whatever other communications you had.
I think we just believed it was important to make it clear what we were seeing, and that we felt it was in the public's interest, not just here in the United States, but around the world, to know that we know what's in this playbook and how it would potentially play out in Russian state and social media, so that if it does happen, it can be easily identified for what it is, which is a fabrication and a pretext.
And you said a couple times now what we are seeing. So from that, can we accurately assume that the intelligence is, well, first, generated by the U.S.? You're not getting this through second or third parties, and your assessment is a U.S. assessment. So when you say what we are seeing, the U.S. is seeing the information directly. You're not getting it from other parties in the region.
Intelligence is a fabric, Barb, and it comes oftentimes from many different sources, some organic and some not. I'm not going to speak to the nature of the specific intelligence other than to assert our confidence in it, and I think I'll leave it at that. Another one?
Yeah, could just to verify this. North Korean Kim Jong-un said that the hypersonic missile was the final test fired last Monday. But this one, yesterday one, is not a hypersonic missile. It's possible, or what do you think?
We've classified it as a ballistic launch, and we're going to leave it at that right now. We're still doing an intelligence assessment.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Have a good weekend, everybody. We'll see you in a few days.